Hey, it's Tony Robbins again. Welcome back. Quantum growth to your business, breakthroughs in your business. How do we make that happen even in a tightening market? Well, today's session, I think you're going to really be excited about. It's not me. I'm just opening this up to somebody that I look to as an expert. Look, we've talked about already that if you're going to be successful in business, you have to do one thing above all else: add more value to more people's lives than anybody else does. If you add that value in the way people want the value, you build a brand, and all of a sudden people are seeking you out. They'll pay a premium for what you're offering, which allows you to build a successful business because you get a margin, you can do well. So the secret is, we've learned all these ways to add value, but what's the factor? We talked about the X factor as what sets you apart in marketing. But if you want to see what's the X factor in a business today, you have to look at technology. Technology is changing our lives today faster than any time in human history. It's changing the way we think, the way we behave, in subtle ways and not so subtle ways. And if you aren't on the cutting edge of using technology, you're in trouble. And by the way, I don't care if you're 65, 55, and you say, oh, that stuff's, I don't need that stuff. That's the mistake. That's the mark of death in business today. You've got to become an innovator. You can't say, I'm going to farm that out to somebody else. You've got to learn to master this area. Now, it might sound overwhelming, but in a few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to a man who can make it really simple for you. He's one of the teachers at Business Mastery, Scott Klosowski. He's the guy that I go to. He's the guy that some of the biggest corporations in the world go to say, how do we use all these incredible new tools of technology and social networks and social selling? How do we put those things together and really produce a real measurable result, not just make ourselves feel good and go, we got an operation that's doing some working with some social networks. He is the go-to guy in this area. But first, there's a little video we found here that we thought you'd really find interesting. It's just a great poetic approach to describing how much technology is changing our world. Take a moment right now and just take a look.
In 1938, following the fateful night of broken glass, 30,000 Jewish men were sent to any number of concentration camps. And while the world looked on through the shattered windows of the Nazis' caper, it took 2 years for the camp's atrocities to make the Times front page paper. Then later in 1942, the US State Department refused to release the Third Reich's intent to exterminate the Jews because, apparently, genocide isn't quite headline news. But when it finally did reach the public's view, you could find 700,000 deaths shoved to page 5 in paragraphs 1 and 2. Compare this to 2009 when Nida Agal Sultan was shot in an Iranian election protest and died. A shaky cell phone video sent her last breaths worldwide, and she was trending on Twitter before the end of the night. Millions of views just one day later, and Iran's unjust election protests headlined every paper. The crucial difference between the Holocaust news and the Iranian protesters is not the importance of the communication, but the reach of the communicator. We are now frictionless neighbors, world news curators, cultural translators, censorship invaders, content creators. We are the printing press every second. We are citizen journalists, just look at past and current events. Peace and Liberty Square, protesters tweeted, and 30 years of corrupt power finally seceded in Egypt. The Libyan voiceless had their voices lifted as Facebook groups and YouTube views sent their dictator into refuge. The bloody summer in Kashmir, India sent residents into house arrest diaspora. But locked doors and excommunication can't stop the roar of connected social communication. Governments cannot stop us, censorship cannot block us, advertisers cannot co-opt us. No amount of money that they brought us could equal the richness this connection brought us. We form our own caucus, the mission, direction, and autonomy of the People's Party. There's nothing blocking these other than our own monotony. We are the democracy, voting with our views, owning our own news, uploading our voice as we choose which goods, services, and resources to use. We've only just lit the fuse, but this movement is set to explode. We can slip love letters under the Palestinian wall, hurl compassion grenades over the Gaza Strip. Stand in solidarity around North Korea's 22nd camp. Track, expose, and rally against the LRA halfway around the globe. And with this marriage of connected people and hope, we have only just begun to elope. So let us not simply cope with the upward curve of our connected slope, but let us use this radical rope to bind together all the pieces of our broken globe.
Wow. Very elegant young man with a message that all of us have to think about. The whole world is being changed in minutes before our eyes. What used to take decades or ages to do can happen now in minutes. Entire societies are changing. You know, the Arab Spring or Arab Winter, no matter how you look at it, has been triggered by these social networks, by the way human beings interact, and by the use and access to technology. So there's an arsenal of tools out there. If you understand what they are and you learn how to use them, the beautiful thing is they cost next to nothing, and they can provide for you such exponential growth for your business, it's unbelievable. If your business is about making money, or if your business is about making a difference, or hopefully your business is about both, if you're about both those things, the tools that are available are like never before in history. You no longer have the limits in front of you of someone else controlling the pipe of whether you can get out to a mass audience of people. As I said before, you can be in Korea and come up with a crazy funny video with a good beat, and 1 billion people can now hear what you have to say or what you want to share. Your humor, your insight, your interest, your product, or your service. But we have to find a way to add value and then use technology to scale that, as well as technology to listen to what customers are feeling and in real time meet their needs. There's some tremendous tools, and just for this brief session, I know Scott's going to introduce you to a couple of those to help you have a better understanding of how you can take advantage of technology to grow your business. Here's my dear friend and business mastery facilitator, Scott Kozlowski, on some of the tools for tech mastery.
If you think technology has changed things a lot so far, let me tell you, you don't understand how much it's got to go. I mean, we're going to have another 20 years of technology going through industry after industry after industry, dramatically changing it. And I'm going to show you why. Okay? Because technology is connecting things that have never been connected before. Social. Social is very different than what most people think it is today. Most people think social is Facebook. Social is far beyond just Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. Right? There's actually 15 elements inside of social. But social is all about connecting to people in a new way. In fact, I love what Craig Davis said. J. Walter Thompson, JWT, is a really big advertising agency. Audiences everywhere are tough. They don't have time to be bored or browbeaten by orthodox, old-fashioned advertising. So we need to stop interrupting what people are interested in and be what people are interested in. Customers are changing. Now, how customers are buying is changing, and this is an important thing to really understand the distinction. It's not just that customers are using social technologies to rate people, to talk to their friends about products, to connect to products, literally using technology to buy in new ways. Now, for some of you in this room, you don't have to sell something different. You don't have to price your thing any different at all. All you have to do is use technology to sell it in a different way. So, for example, this is South Korea. Tesco grocery stores. They were trying to solve the problem of how could they sell more groceries without building more grocery stores. So somebody came up with a great idea of, in a Subway, they would put pictures of their top selling items, and then they had a mobile app, and all you do now while you're waiting for the train is you walk down the line and you snap the QR codes for the products that you want, and it creates a grocery list. You forward it to the store where you're going to walk off the train. They already have your credit card, so when you walk off the train, the bags of groceries are lined up with your name on them. You just grab them and walk away. It's just a new way to buy. They're still selling the same groceries, but they didn't have to build new stores. They just made it more convenient for the customer. You understand how powerful something like that is. There is a difference between traditional interruption, spray and pray advertising. Television, radio, newspaper, billboard, right? That spray and pray interruption marketing. We were interrupting something you were doing with our marketing so that you would pay attention. We are moving now into earned media. Earned media means I am delivering some stream of content to you that is of value to you, And then that earns me the right to do a little bit of marketing every now and then. All right, that's called the organizational voice. So let me walk you through, right, how you would be thinking about this. So let's just say we were going to use a blog, right? The blog was going to be a channel. Okay, here's the process we would normally take clients through. First thing we'd say, as always, who are your constituents? Who are you talking to? Because a lot of times you can't use the same blog to talk to all your customers because you might have very different types of customers. Okay, so who are you talking to? Next thing we're going to make you define is what's your tone of voice. When you talk online, there needs to be a tone of voice. It needs to sound like a human is talking to them. It can't be corporate speak. It can't be boring. And so we'll make you pick some words. And we really want you to pick words like sense of humor, sarcasm, optimism, right? Pick something that defines the tone of voice for how you communicate online, that represents you. It cannot be boring corporate speak. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is how often should you talk to them? If you talk to them every day, they might start tuning you out. Maybe that's too often. Feel like you're spamming them. Maybe you need to talk to them once a week. But if you don't talk to them enough, if it's once every 3 months, then you're not providing any value. So you have to find the right area, right? Not too often, not too little. Next thing we're going to try to figure out is which channel should you be using for that constituency? Is it a blog? Is it a podcast? Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? We got all kinds of channels, right? Depending on that audience, depending on how often you want to talk to them, we might use a different channel. So we're going to figure that out. Then we're going to figure out what's your content mix. When you talk to people online, you have to know what the recipe is. Let me tell you what the recipe is not. Me trying to sell you every time I talk to you. That's not a good recipe. That would be like the only ingredient in my recipe is sugar. Okay, that doesn't work. And so you have to have a recipe of what can I say that's valuable to you? And then you have some kind of ratio of I'm going to say 5 things that are valuable to you for every one time I try to sell anything. Right? But you got to know what this content mix is and don't screw it up. Because if you screw it up, you're not providing value. Then it's not earned media anymore. All right? So we normally make clients literally fill out a recipe card and tell us what their recipe mix is. All right, next thing you're going to have to do is figure out who is the editor. So who is putting together the content for this? Who's going to make sure the voice is always the same? Where are you going to get the content? You don't have to create all your own content. A lot of times people we know, they run in like a 70-30 mix. 70% of the content in their blog will be stuff they just found on the internet that would be interesting to that audience. 30% might be something that they've created. Then you got to figure out how you're going to measure it. So how do we know if this is working as a connection for us? So you need to know, well, how fast are people subscribing to it? What's my conversion rate of people that will click on a link and go actually take some action? Right? So you have different kinds of measurement systems. So I just want you to understand, right? Then the last thing some people will do is they'll really amplify their voice, right? They'll post all over the web this content so that the search engines find it a lot. But you got to carefully construct what is the voice that you're going to use. It's not just about doing a blog anymore. It's about literally creating the voice that you're going to stick with for years. And that voice has to be valuable to the people on the other side who are listening to it. All right. Another technique that's critical under the social wing is social media 100 digital asset technique. Common thing we do also. Right? What we do is we say, okay, look, there are 4 different kinds of media, social media. There's videos, okay, there's documents, there are graphics or infographics, photos, and then there are presentations like SlideShare. All right? So those are the 4 different kinds of media. And what we want you to do is create 100 assets that are spread across these 4 different kinds. It could be 25 videos. It could be 10 documents. It could be 30 graphics and photos. It could be 12 presentations. But we want you to create digital assets that have to do with whatever business you're in. And then we want you to upload those onto SlideShare, YouTube, Scribd, okay, Flickr, right? Put them up into the social media sites, and then you index them with the keywords that people are going to search on when they're looking for you. And what will happen is you will have these assets spread all over the internet, and when people search, they will trip across these assets. which are going to bring them to you, right, and make you look like you are the industry expert. And that's the big thing we're trying to create. Whatever industry you're in, we want you to look like you are the industry expert. And that's why we try to put 100 assets out there. All right, I want you to understand crowd dynamics. We talked about crowd a little bit before, but crowd dynamics include things like crowdsourcing, the wisdom of crowds. How do you go on sites and just ask questions? There's a site called Jigg, J-I-G-G. There's a site called Quora, Q-U-O-R-A, right? Question or answer is what Quora stands for. You can go ask any question on those sites, and the crowd will answer your question. If you've never done it before, you ought to try it. It's amazing, the kind of answers you can get. There's crowdfunding. If you want to raise money for a product, if you want to raise money for your company, right, you can do crowdfunding today. If you have problems, there's crowd solving. There are sites where you can go state your problem, and the crowd helps you to solve the problem. And as I told you, there's crowd accelerated innovation. If you need an idea, there are sites where you can go say, look, I'm looking for an idea here, and the crowd will throw you a bunch of ideas. Hey, now, if you're not familiar with crowd, I tell you, there are hundreds today, hundreds of websites that help you do crowdsourcing. And so you can go online and, crowdsource logo, you're going to get logo tournament. Crowdsource brochure, you're going to get CrowdSpring, right? So you can go online and find sites that will help you crowdsource almost anything that you want to do. There are other interesting things, right? The city of Boston, they decided to use crowdsourcing to find potholes. And so they created a mobile app that when people load it, when they're driving in their cars, the mobile app's reporting into the streets department, and every time the phone bounces in their car, it tells the streets department exactly where they are. And so that way the streets department can triangulate where the potholes are just by crowdsourcing drivers. Or in the U.S., our military now builds its battle plans by crowdsourcing gamers. And so what they do is they create games that simulate battles, and then they let the gamers play it. And whoever scores the best, that's the battle plan our military starts using. So both the Air Force and the Navy do it now. They crowdsource gamers to build our battle plans. Look, Kickstarter, right? Hopefully you're familiar with Kickstarter. There have been a number of people now that have raised millions of dollars on Kickstarter to get their products off the ground or get their company off the ground. I've even watched a friend of mine. He used a system called Chip In. He just needed to raise $13,000. And he's actually a juggler and a comedian. And he got the chance to have a show at a big casino, and he wanted to create a background. And so he had somebody design a background for him that was inflatable, but it cost $13,000 and he didn't have it. So he used Chip In just to send out to his family and friends. And in 1 week, he had $13,000 just from crowdsourcing his family and friends with Chip In. So I just want you to understand the concept of how powerful crowd dynamics are today. But again, there are a lot of people I know who don't even understand this stuff exists and aren't using it, especially if you're a small business. Oh my gosh. There's so much help the crowd could be if you'll just learn to use the techniques. All right, mobile. Okay, just a few things I want you to understand about mobile. Obviously, the majority of people who search for a product now are searching from a mobile device. It's up to like 55-60% now. I mean, the world obviously is moving more and more mobile, so we have to be good at how we use it. Now, what I want you to understand is, mobile is now, it's not a phone anymore, okay? It's actually becoming an outboard brain. Sociologists say it's becoming an outboard brain because it does three things, okay? First thing it does is it stores memory for us. And so most people, addresses, dates, anniversaries, right, phone numbers, right, they all get stored here. We don't store those small bits of data anymore. They're all stored here. Second thing it does is it solves problems for us. When sociologists watch, they observe people all day long, a high percentage of the way problems get solved are with this device now. It's the first place we reach out to. And then the third thing it does is it gives us access to knowledge. And so it used to be we got all knowledge from here, or we had to ask somebody else. Today we ask this, and it gives us access to huge amounts of knowledge. So for those reasons, this is becoming like an outboard brain. And you need to understand that, because when it comes to sales and marketing and those kinds of things, this is what your customers use. They are incredibly addicted to this device. They're addicted to the connection it gives them. She's been very nervous ever since I walked away with her device. You can tell it's not just kids that are addicted anymore. It bothered you, didn't it? Here it is. I didn't hurt it. Yeah. But you got to understand, right, that customers now look at this thing as an outboard brain. And so you cannot any longer build a website but then not account for that fact. Right? So there's always three things you have to do with mobile or you have to be thinking about. And that first one is, do I have a mobile version of my website? Statistics today show 62% of everybody who goes to a website from a mobile device, if it's not a mobile website, they never return. 62%. They're just gone. They'll never come back. And we got a lot of people who don't have a mobile version of their websites yet. And then there's the mobile app. As I told you, sometimes a mobile application can dramatically change your revenue. One of our clients is a big hair salon franchisor. They've got about 3,000 locations. We built a mobile app last year, and all the mobile app does is it lets people check and see what the wait time is of any of the hair salons in the city, and then it lets them check in remotely. And when it checks in, it starts a countdown to tell them how long until they can just walk right in and sit in the chair. So all it does is save people time. All right, in the last 12 months, it's been downloaded 1.3 million times. Every one of those people has become an extremely loyal, regular customer. And we've changed the dynamics in the salon now where there's not a bunch of people sitting in chairs waiting. There's no one else in the industry yet that's built this app, and so they're 2 years in front of everybody. So they're taking millions of dollars in revenue away from everybody else just because they built a mobile app before everybody else did. Right? And then the last thing is to understand, is there anything you can do location-based? So is there anything that I can do because I know where my customer is physically? Because there are a lot of you that are in business where if you knew where the customer was physically, right, then you could talk to them in some different way, some way that would be beneficial to them. So those are always the three things we worry about with mobile. So I just wanted you to just think about that. Okay? Mobile is a powerful element right now in marketing. Customers are changing. How they buy is changing. So the question is, are you clever enough to figure out some new way to sell what you sell?